Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel a good couple of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last couple of years and this is one that simply kind of caught my eye. It's a style that I've been getting really into once again recently and it's a hop that I really enjoy as well. So, you know, why not? So for this one then, we are going to head a little bit north of me here in Lund to Dalarna County and the town of Sälen to be specific, which is very well known as a ski town from what I gather. I still need to get up to Dalarna and take a little look around, but we're going to have a look at another beer from Sälens Fjällbryggeri. So this particular beer is called the Amarillo Pills. It comes in at 5.9% ABV, so I guess it maybe is more of an IPL, an India Pale Lager, rather than a Pilsner because it's a little bit heavier in alcohol. But this one was released as part of the Lokal Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for March of 2021. But yeah, as you know if you've been watching the channel for any length of time, I'm a huge fan of lager beers, and I was a big fan of the Amarillo hop, probably my favourite of the three kind of classic high alpha acid hops from the States. So when I saw this one come through, I thought, you know, I have to have a go at this one. I don't think I've ever had Amarillo in an IPL or in a Pilsner before, come to think of it. But correct me on that if I'm wrong. I did have an IPL recently from Opigård's brewery that had a couple of different hops in it, so I may well have had Amarillo in that, but to have one that is dedicated to Amarillo, I think should be quite interesting. But yeah, very, very curious to see how this one turns out. Nice to return to Sälens Fjällbryggeri once again. When I checked my channel just before filming this one, it turns out that it's been about 6 months since my last review from these guys. The last one was the Fjällbock, which I filmed back in October. So yeah, didn't realise it had been that long, so that makes this review even better. But yeah, curious to see how this one turns out, and as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So let's see how we get on then. So as always, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Sälens Fjällbryggeri before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. Always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Sälens Fjällbryggeri then, on to my brewery notes. So as I've mentioned to you already, this brewery is based in the small town of Sälen in Dalarna County, which is about halfway up the county, if I remember rightly, on the western side, quite close to the Norwegian border in fact, and as I said also, it's quite a famous skiing town from what I gather. But the brewery was founded back in 2012 by Pelle Hoffman and Magnus Engström, who together own the Gustav Grill and Bar restaurant in the Lindvallen area of the town, but they also own the Hemfjällstugan and also the Fjällbagaren restaurants as well. But Pelle had been homebrewing for a number of years and had actually won a good few competitions, so this kind of spurred him to upscale his brewing and start selling his beers. But he then decided that he wanted to put them into the restaurant. And this went down very, very well with his customers. And initially they were only producing the beers in very small 50-litre batches. And so they were very prolific in producing a lot of different beers and experimenting with recipes. And that proved to be a very solid foundation for them moving forward. But the positive reactions they got from their customers prompted them to kind of upscale again and put their beers into Systembolaget. So they started off with a capacity of around 200 litres per brew, but they've now moved into a new premises in Lindvallen where they have a 2,000-litre brew kit from the Czech Republic, and this gives them an annual output of around 250,000 litres per year at maximum. But they plan to extend this a little bit further with more fermentation tanks from what I gather, and they're still experimenting quite a bit with different recipes and things like that. As of March 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, according to Untappd, these guys have produced in the region of 100 different kinds of beer, and if memory serves me correctly, this is review number 6 or 7 that I've done from these guys. But yeah, I think this one could be a really interesting one. Actually, next month they've got a New England IPA coming out, which I'm looking forward to try, because I don't think I've had a New England IPA from them yet. I'm sure I've had a red IPA, I've had the Pilsner, I've had the Bock, and I think I had a white IPA from these guys at one stage as well. I think it was the white IPA that was the very first beer I've had from them. I've maybe had a black IPA, come to think of it as well. So a New England will be quite interesting, and I guess at some stage I've got to try something of a a West Coaster as well. And the next thing after that, of course, will be a stout of some description. So I'll need to just have a wee look at their kind of regular range and see what they've actually got, because I usually just try the new stuff when it comes out, of course. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Sälens Fjällbryggeri just now. These guys, in my experience, have always got really nice, clean and well-flavoured beers, and that's one of the reasons why I keep a lookout for them, actually. A lot of the mountain breweries are quite nice, and there's some very good breweries up in Dalarna, actually. Opigårds is up there, you've got Sälens, and I've had a few other interesting ones from up there as well. So if you put Dalarna into the channel, a lot of these videos should come up and you'll see all the different Dalarna beers that I've reviewed. So yeah, as I said, that's all I can really tell you about these guys. If you want to learn more, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's get on and take a look at this beer itself then. So as you can see, the artwork in this one is pretty similar to what we're used to from Sälens Fjällbryggeri. They've got their nice bottle caps on there as well. When I first reviewed a beer from these guys, I think it was quite a tall 330ml bottle that they had, but yeah, they've gone down to the more kind of stubby variant, if you like, and I think these are a bit thinner to kind of save glass as well, if I remember rightly. It's kind of a similar composition, if you like, to the bottles that Brewski were using for quite a period of time. But yeah, it certainly is nicely presented. I do like the kind of lodge type artwork that they have on this one, but it tells you a little bit on the side about the beer here. It says Sälens Fjällbryggeri is a little brewery that is located in Lindvallen in Sälen. We were founded in 2012 and our roots are in the home brewing tradition. Amarillo Pils Spring Edition is an India Pale Lager, a beer known for its crispiness, a little bit more crisp than a Pils, with the hop characteristics from an IPA. So yeah, they're describing it as an IPL, 5.9% ABV. That would be the kind of defining factor for me, would be 1, the hoppiness, and 2, the slightly higher alcohol content. That's really what makes an IPL. But yeah, for those of you who don't know, Amarillo hops are one of the original high alpha acid hops from the States, if I remember rightly, about 12% alpha acid, and it gives you a lovely big oily orange colour. It's quite nice to see Amarillo getting a bit more attention again recently, because everyone went crazy about Mosaic, and it kind of replaced Amarillo as the mainstay when it comes to orangey sort of things. But you've got so many orangey hops these days. You've got Sabro, you've got Amarillo, you've got Azaka, Mosaic. There's a few from New Zealand as well, like Pacifica, and I want to see Waihiti as well, has a lot of orange character. But yeah, 330ml bottle with this one. This beer wasn't overly expensive. I think it was about maybe 30 Swedish kroner, so roughly about €3, about £2.50, something like that, and then maybe $3.50 American. So yeah, let's get this guy out then and we'll get on with the tasting. I'm very curious to see what this has in store for us. But yeah, nice little bit of smoke on the opening, and yeah, oh, you can smell that orange already. I love Amarillo. Yeah, this is going to be good. Glad that I got this one. Suck it if I see Amarillo and Pilsner. Then yeah, so maybe that is one of the things that is, you maybe have to pick them up a wee bit on their marketing, because a Pilsner is distinctly different from an IPL, so maybe they should be saying Amarillo IPL on this. Just a little point for the brewery if someone watches, actually, because that is a little bit of a marketing problem, actually. But yeah, because I was thinking that this would be a Pilsner, a proper Pilsner beer done just with the Amarillo hops, because there is a bit of a difference between an IPA and a Pilsner, in my opinion. A Pilsner, this is quite strong for a Pilsner or a Pilsen, whatever you want to call it. But for those of you that don't know, the Pilsner style Pilsen actually originates from the Czech city of Pilsen, which was in the Austro-Hungarian Empire when it was developed. It was made by a Bavarian brewer, if I remember rightly, who wasn't a very nice man. He only lasted in the city about 2 years, then he got booted out, and there was a Czech brewer came in. And now the original Pilsner beer is Pilsner Urquell, or Plzeňský Prazdroj, as the Czechs call it. So yeah, it's a lager beer, which means bottom fermenting yeasts, cold fermentation, somewhere between 8 and 12 degrees. Basically, ales, of course, are somewhere between 15 and 18 degrees normally. So yeah, That's a basic thing, another type of lager beer, this one, but that is your story of the Pilsner. But anyway, as you can see with this particular beer, it poured with about a 2/3 finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head. That's going to fade away to just be a very, very thin foamy layer, which looks quite nice, but you can see there is a good foamy ring just around the edge of the glass. And you can see, you know, as you would expect for a Pilsner or a light lager of any description, this one's poured a lovely, very rich, golden, straw colour looking beer. So yeah, 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there, and it does have a wee bit of that natural haze to it. You could easily mistake this for a West Coast IPA. I've had West Coast IPAs that are this colour, notably Pliny the Elder, I think, was a bit more of a yellow colour as well. But yeah, when it comes to the colour of your beer, it's dependent on 2 things. 1, the type of malts that you use, and 2, the length of your wort boil. If you're talking about sours and stuff like this, then the adjuncts and the barrel aging are also going to play a role. But basically, when it comes to this kind of beer, the longer you boil your wort, the more the sugars caramelise, thus you get a darker colour of the beer. But then it's dependent in the first instance on the malt types that you use in that wort boil. But yeah, it certainly looks very, very nice, this one, and pretty much what you would expect from a Pilsner beer. So yeah, looking pretty good actually. So let's take a closer look at the aroma then and see how we get on. So nothing overall, you know, really surprising about this beer when you consider that it's a Pilsner, IPL, whatever. But yeah, let's go for it then. It does smell pretty nice actually. So straight away with this beer, what I'm going to say about it is it's actually got quite a little bit of breadiness to it. And when it comes to the Pilsen versus the Pilsner, of course, you've got all these different lager beers in the Czech Republic and in Germany. Generally speaking, the Czech ones are a little bit more yeasty and, you know, they taste a little bit more bready in that sense, whereas the German ones are a little bit more kind of crisp. This one actually smells as if it's somewhere in between. You can smell that there's a bit more of a kind of yeasty and slightly bready character to it, but it does have the kind of crispness you'd expect in the nose of a German one as well. So it's probably got a good mix of barley malt and Pilsner malt in it actually. So that's probably what's going on here, and that, in fairness, is fairly common in IPLs, to be honest with you. They'll use a little bit of a kind of pale malt or something like this, a little bit of, you know, a lager malt, and then a little bit of Pilsner malt sometimes, and sometimes they'll use a wee bit, you know, like biscuit or Cara Munich or something like this. So I suspect, going from the aroma of the malty side of things here, that's what's going on in this one. But yeah, the malty side of this beer is quite nice. I mean, straight away with this one, you can smell a lovely bit of soft kind of white bready character in there. If you take the aroma in a little bit more deeply, you can get some of that kind of crispness of the Pilsner malt out of the beer, and that's what I would say. You know, it's a little bit annoying to kind of describe the aroma of Pilsner malt because it's more about the vibe that it gives the beer rather than the actual smell. You can just smell the crispness out of these beers, but soft white bready notes, a little bit of a bread crusty quality in there definitely, then you get that nice dry kind of Pilsner quality to it, a little bit of a kind of sweet biscuity McVitie's digestive sort of thing, and yeah, I think that kind of describes the aroma out of the malty side of this beer pretty nicely. But yeah, you definitely get a wee touch of a yeasty character out of it, which I do quite enjoy, and yeah, the aroma goes together very, very nicely. So yeah, it goes very well. I do like how this I do like how the malty side of it goes together. So it does smell, you can smell that it's a little bit more kind of, it's got a little touch of an ale character to it, I would say, in the malty side of things, but you know, that's not really a bad thing. I think that will come across quite nicely in the actual flavour of the beer. But on the green side of things, it does work out really nicely as well. But yeah, in the back of the nose, you definitely get a wee touch of earthiness out of it. There's a nice little bit of floral aromaticity there. And the other thing to do with these beers is kind of waft the aroma a little bit over to you. We always got told to do this in the lab with the different chemicals and things. You never shove your nose right into a chemical, but yeah, it's very, very nice in that sense as well. But yeah, you've got a nice little bit of floral aromaticity to this one, a good little bit of grassy character as well. I wouldn't describe this beer as being overly spicy or anything like that, but yeah, the green component just comes across really quite nicely. Going from the way the aroma is in this beer, I would say that the majority of the hops in this our late addition. I would be very curious to know whether they've used like a Czech or a German hop as the bittering hop in this, because it really does not smell all that bitter, but we'll wait and see how that kind of comes out in the flavour. And remember, when it comes to these beers, if you add the hops in the early part of the wort boil, that's when you're going to get more bitterness. The later you add them, you're going to get that trade-off between bitterness and you're going to get the trade-off between bitterness in favour of flavour and aroma. So yeah, this one doesn't smell too kind of spicy and floral and stuff like that. So yeah, probably a lot of late addition hops in this beer. But then the fruity aromas of the beer, it's got a lovely, as I say, you always get a big oily orange out of Amarillo. But for me, there's quite a wee bit of a sort of, it's almost like a little bit pineapple-y or kind of apricot-y or something like that. There are a few other things kind of going on in this beer as well. There's a wee bit of a kind of tropical-y thing, almost like a little bit of a marmalade-y element to this beer. So I really like how that side of it goes together as well. The aroma out of this beer, I think, is very, very nicely done. So thumbs up to Sälens Fjällbryggeri for this beer. I think other than what we've described so far, there's not too much more to say about this one in terms of the aroma, but that's quite often the case with IPLs. They're usually pretty straight shooting, and when they're single hop like this, that's not surprising. But yeah, lovely big oily orangey notes to it. There's a little bit of an apricot-y note for me as well, maybe even a wee touch of like pineapple or something, like I said, and just a wee bit of grassy zestiness on the front of the nose too. So yeah, I do like how this one goes together. So it gets a thumbs up from me aroma wise, but I'm very curious about this, so I think it's about time we try it. So this one is the Amarillo Pils, if I can say it properly, coming in at 5.9% ABV from Sälens Fjällbryggeri in Dalarna County here in Sweden. Nice to return to these guys again, and let's just have a go at this. Slange, skål, cheers. Yeah, that's pretty nice, I have to say. It's quite, it does have a wee bit more bitterness about it than the aroma would have you believe, absolutely. But yeah, it gets a thumbs up from me. Absolutely, I like how this, I do like how this one goes about its business actually. So yeah, if you're a fan of IPLs and you like orange leaning beers, then I think this one will suit you. It does have a wee bit of that more kind of German crispness to it than I was expecting from the aroma. But at the same time, the malty and yeasty side of the beer shows its head a little bit more as well. But yeah, I like this one. Is it the best beer I've had from Sälens Fjällbryggeri? I wouldn't say so. I think I liked some of the other ones a little bit better than this one. But is it a good beer and is it very drinkable? Then yeah, I would say that. So yeah, definitely a thumbs up to them for this. A nice little bit of something different for sure. Yeah. Okay. All right then. So where to start with this beer then? It's not often that you find an IPL. That's another thing we should point out with this. But if you know the style, you will appreciate that this one is a good kind of typical example of what you should expect from this style. But yeah, straight away across the middle of your tongue, then you get a nice soft white bready character there. That just blankets the middle of your palate. If you go towards the back of that that middle third of your tongue, you can definitely get the more kind of crisp pilsnery malt elements coming out of the beer. So I think this one's balanced between like maybe a lager malt and a pale malt and then a pilsner malt in there. I think there's quite a few little things going on there because you can just really get that crispness out of the pilsner malt, which I think works really nicely. But sitting on top of that, you've got a slightly more kind of bready character. It almost comes across as being a little bit more sort of wholemeally in a sense. So yeah, I do like how that goes together. Absolutely. But yeah, sitting on top of the breadiness then in the centre of your palate, you do get a wee bit of there is a wee bit of a straight up sweet caramel there, but it dies away the further you go into the aftertaste and becomes a little bit more sort of grainy. But then as you move out from the centre of your palate, it becomes more and more it becomes more and more sort of kind of biscuity, if you like. So yeah, I can appreciate how that goes together for sure. There's definitely a nice little bit of a biscuity element about this beer. So yeah, it does get a wee bit drier the further you go into the aftertaste as well. You get more and more of the kind of Pilsner malts coming out of it, as well as a bit of the hoppy bitterness, but we'll come to the hops in a little bit. But yeah, malty side of this beer is kind of what you'd expect, and it's got that slightly boozier presence about it. The more you go into the flavour, it gives you that slightly more boozy presence that you would expect of an IPL. So yeah. But yeah, in terms of the back third of your palate then, so as I always say, I usually say, if you go to that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you can feel there's a bit of a thicker breadiness in there. There's a wee bit of a bread crusty element to it. But then yeah, on the back third of the palate, there's definitely a little bit more of a kind of crispness and graininess in there, and a wee bit of a yeasty character just kind of coming out on top of it. So yeah, you get a wee bit of that there, but I think the graininess and Pilsner malts really take over the back third of your palate. It does feel a wee bit thicker on that back third of your palate, but then as you move further forward on the border region, it drops away and it just gives you a slightly more dense layer of different fruity things. So yeah, I can certainly appreciate how that goes together in this beer. So thumbs up to Sälens Fjällbryggeri for this one. So yeah. So yeah, I think this does work out really nicely. So in the back corners of the palate, you've got a little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward along the sides of the tongue, it does develop a wee bit more. It does quite quickly develop to be sort of quite spicy and floral and aromatic, which is quite interesting. I've never seen this sort of spicy side of Amarillo before, and it's definitely, I think what I said earlier about there maybe being a noble hop or something like that in this, Czech Sats, Hallertau, Tettnanger from Germany, whatever, I think that's wrong. I think this one, it's Amarillo all the way, but I've never quite seen this big spicy side of Amarillo before. So that's definitely an interesting point to take away from this beer, but it just goes to show you a lot of these high alpha acid hops do have that in their locker if they're used as early edition hops. So that's an interesting little learning curve, this one. It's been a long time since I've had a single hop Amarillo beer. The last one would have been the 100 series from OO Brewing in Gothenburg, come to think of it. So yeah, that's another interesting point here. But round the front curve of the palate, the beer's a little bit lighter and more grassy, but there is quite a little bit of zestiness to the grassy component of the beer too. So yeah, I like how that goes together for sure. So yeah, yeah, on that front curve of the palate, you can feel the bitterness, the sort of big green bitterness almost kind of stops in the front corner of the palate, then it just does become a little bit more zesty, which I do like. But yeah, the green component of this beer, I think, gives the beer a sort of degree of crispness. So I can appreciate that about it, definitely. But yeah, on that front third of your palate then, as I always say, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. But if you go to the back of that front third of your palate, the border region, again, you get a wee bit of a thicker breadiness and a bit of a kind of bread crusty, grainy quality there, but the basis of that front third of your palate there, it feels like there's a wee bit of the Pilsner malt in there, and there's also just a little bit of the kind of lagery, soft, bready sort of thing. But yeah, for me, the front third of your palate is orange all the way. Those sort of apricot-y, pineapple-y notes that I was picking up in the aroma, I don't really get so much of those in the actual flavour with this one. So I would definitely say that it's a really interesting beer in that sense actually, but you do get quite a bit of zestiness on that front edge of the palate. But it's an oily orange all the way, but I would say it's quite concentrated in oily and orange in the centre, and then as you move further out towards the edges of the palate, it's a little bit lighter and more sort of tangerine in a sense. So yeah, I like how that pieces together in this one. So yeah, the orangey side of Amarillo coming out really nicely in this, and it reminds me of why I enjoyed this hop. So yeah, it's definitely interesting, this one. I think the Amarillo works quite well in the IPL setting. So yeah, maybe Amarillo. I wonder how it would work in like an authentic pils, if that makes sense. Because like I say, this one's a bit heavier in alcohol than a regular Pilsner would be. So I think it would be interesting to try Pilsners, you know, standard strength Pilsners between 4.5% and 5% with these American hops. It could be an interesting thing to do. I know quite a few breweries have done it with like Citra and things, but with Amarillo and some of the other ones, that could be a very interesting thing, definitely. But yeah, I think that summarises the flavour of this beer quite nicely. In terms of the mouthfeel then, I would say that this beer, top end of light body, bottom end of mid body. The carbonation is very, very smooth. The mouthfeel overall, has a little bit of oiliness to it, a wee bit of crispness at the same time. Nice sort of smooth malty character in there, which I really like. You get a wee bit of crispness, as I say, from the Pilsner malt, and a bit of sweetness develops out of it later too. But yeah, nice hoppy bitterness. I'd say this one, you know, what is it, maybe about 30 IBUs? Yeah, probably about 30 IBUs. It's not going to blow the head off you in terms of bitterness, but it does have a nice wee kick to it. And, pardon me, swallowed my slavers the wrong way. But yeah, don't know how I did that, but on the fruity side of things, it's a little bit oily, a little bit juicy, and I think it's quite well balanced in that sense too. As I said earlier, is this my favourite beer that I've had from Sälens Fjällbryggeri? Not quite. It's not quite as refined as some of the other ones, I think, that I've had from them. The Fjällbock was really nice, and the Pilsen that we had before that I thought was really nicely executed as well. But it's an interesting experiment, yeah, and that's, you know, a lot of what craft beer is about, so we'll give them thumbs up for that. I think this is an interesting one. I would have liked to have seen it as an ordinary Pils, and I would pick them up on the marketing side of that and say, yeah, if you're saying Amarillo Pils, it shouldn't be an IPL. There's a difference in the styles there, because the IPL is distinctly more boozy. This beer, definitely an IPL, and they say that on the bottle, but I wouldn't call it the Amarillo Pils if it's not a Pilsner between like 4.5% and 5%. So I would pick them up on the marketing and the name of this beer. But yeah, some might say that's me nitpicking, but what can you do? But yeah, I've enjoyed this review. I always enjoy reviewing new stuff from Sälens Fjällbryggeri, so I hope that you guys have enjoyed my take on this one. And I'm sure we'll have something else to review from these guys at some point over the next few months. But yeah, this one was the Amarillo Pils, really an IPL at 5.9% ABV from Sälens Fjällbryggeri in Sälen in Dalarna County, kind of halfway up Sweden, if you like, quite close to the Norwegian border, in fact. Thank you again for watching. Check out my social media. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from this brewery, and I will catch you guys very soon in another review. Slange, skull, cheers, and see you later.